Welcome to this edition of the Palmetto Guardian. I'm Specialist David Erskine, and back out at the Best Warrior competition. Today, I have some special guests with us. Actually, the two individuals kind of spearheaded this year's Best Warrior regional Best Warrior competition. I have them introduce themselves, and we'll go from there.
Sergeant Major Jason Gregory, G3 NCIC.
First Sergeant Stephen Moore, Joint Force Headquarters, First Sergeant.
Well, first off, I'd like to say thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time out of a very, very busy schedule to sit down and talk with me. Let's start off because there was some interesting hurdles leading into this year's regional Best Warrior competition. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time we've hosted regionals, or maybe hosted regionals in a long time.
Roger. So the regionals typically rotate between the states in the region, and so typically about every 7 years, South Carolina's number comes up and their ticket. So it's been 7 years since we've executed a regional in our state.
And now, not only did we execute regionals in this year, but as most of the world knows, we've done with some extenuating circumstances along with the COVID-19 pandemic. What kind of hurdles and things did that present trying to organize this event?
So, of course, in the operating environment we're in, we had to get with Colonel Messer, the state surgeon, and really grasp his understanding of how he needs the event to be ran to protect our soldiers and those that are coming in. So when we first sat down with him, it was very restrictive, and we had a lot of hurdles that we had to overcome. One thing in particular is he wanted to make sure that we kept segregation between the states and males and females. Well, McCready is not as big as the size that it is. We didn't have enough barracks to house that, so we had to change our philosophy a little bit. So no sponsors are at this, no PAOs were allowed other than y'all, and only the sergeant major. So our size of contingent that come from outside of state was greatly reduced because of the billeting restrictions we had at McCready. We also had some other hurdles that we had to overcome. Like, we enjoyed doing the pugil in the state competition, and we knew we enjoyed it at the regional competition. But again, with the safety aspect of it, we had to create some special splatter shields and come up with specific cleaning solutions to be done inside of gloves and on masks and all that good stuff, so we can continue to have that. But with great coordination between the state surgeon's office and the G3 and sergeant major's office on the third floor, we were able to overcome, and Colonel Messer finally signed off, and we're here today executing.
Now, don't know if it's always been this way, but I know the last couple of years I've been involved, it gets passed to a new MSC every year to kind of coordinate, and it fell to Joint Force Headquarters this year. And on top of that, you're a new first sergeant relatively with Joint Force Headquarters, so you kind of got kind of hit from all sides. What kind of hurdles did you have, and of course support that you got to make sure that we were able to accomplish this?
Roger. So I took over in January of this year as a first sergeant at Joint Force Headquarters with limited experience that close to the flagpole and to the tag building. So that was a big learning experience for me, not only being in a first sergeant position for the first time, but also being at Joint Force Headquarters. When you said rotating the Best Warrior competition, that's correct. The state rotates. Last year was 59th Aviation, and this year, this year's state competition was 59th Aviation, and then the G3 and the command team put together the region team, basically from the G3 as the tasking authority for all kind of MSCs throughout the state, so they can support. So the tasking, the G3 put everything together as far as the tasking, and then the Joint Force Headquarters was the coordinating piece as far as the internal mechanism to make it all work and to coordinate the other MSCs involved in the event.
Now, for people who may have not been able to come out to one of the recent Best Warrior competitions, and I believe even the regionals have kind of stepped it up even a little bit further, that there is very much a sampling of the whole of the South Carolina National Guard involved in this event. When I say everybody, just about everybody I can think of has put their hands on this at some level or another. What does that take? And then of course, that does say something about our team and togetherness that we have in South Carolina.
So when you look at how the Best Warrior at the regions operated this year, each MSC was tasked with a very specific task. Specifically, the 218th MEB were responsible for the lanes. 59th Troop Command was responsible for the FOB support. 117th was responsible for the chow operations. Of course, the aviation was responsible for tactical movement to include air movement. 228 Signal was responsible for transport. I don't know if I've hit them all, but every MSC out here in our state had a very specific task to bring this together. And again, it goes back to one of the TAG's priorities, if you've read his stuff, is he's directing the state as a whole to do a combined arms event per each MSC to come together as a state to execute something. So this is the NCO's way of starting that networking and starting to build that so that when we come together as full units doing our MTO task to meet the TAG's directives, we've already kind of got a network, because that's the way the NCOs operate. Is we operate inside of a network, and that's why we're so successful, because we can look at one another and say, hey, look, we need this to happen. Well, the subject matter experts that need that to happen tell us how we make those happen. So this just amplifies and enhances our relationship and our network inside of South Carolina. So when we come together to do our MTO missions, we're just that much more stronger.
And it's amazing to see the different MSCs hit the ground running, and starting in the preparation phase and execution when we got on ground here, coordinating with each other, discussions and talking. And it goes to the relationships within the South Carolina Army National Guard, and building the relationships through the organization and reaching out and using those relationships to put out a quality product, such as the regional best warrior competition in this case.
Now, I know y'all been very busy behind the scenes, but have y'all had a chance to interact with the competitors at all from time to time?
Absolutely. The competitors have been true warriors from day one. They started day one COVID testing. First thing they did when they got out of the car was had a COVID test and went straight into the APFT, and it's been nonstop since then, staying in the field environment and going from task to task. That was initiative from the State Sergeant Major, was little to no downtime and high op tempo throughout the event, and I think we've accomplished that.
Now, something else that we had to kind of deal with a little bit during this event was South Carolina got some of its usual weather around this time of the year. Planning, we were ready. It didn't seem like anything shook or went out of place.
Yeah, so we had we have some of the equipment and support that the MTO units utilize for their state hurricane plans, and we already had a plan in place if MSCs called their equipment back to execute their real world mission. We've already coordinated some building space and safe zones to move everybody into so we can execute our real world mission. You know, it adds a little bit of difficulty, but it was just planning. Thank goodness nothing happened. The hurricane did not bring any damage, and we were just notified to be on a 2-hour stand-up across the state. So there was that planning involved, but luckily nothing major happened, and there was no major muscle moves to get equipment back to the MSCs. But again, going back to what First Sergeant talked about with Joint Force Headquarters, is it being a TDA-style unit, the equipment that we operate on is all MTO equipment. They don't have any, so everything that we have out here comes from the MSCs. So to manage the real-world requirement to the training mission that we have, that just goes back to what we do in the National Guard all the time, especially during hurricane season, maintaining our state of readiness through training and our DISCA requirements.
Now, as far as the events and stuff goes for the Best Warrior competition, of course, we include the GAFB event here. What type of unique feel do you think that brings to the soldiers being able to compete in this?
So when we come together, realizing we had the regional, Sergeant Major Vickery told me, hey, look, we're doing the regionals. And I look back over the TAG's philosophy to make sure we stay in line with his thing. And he's got a very specific line in there where he tasked Sergeant Major Vickery. And it says, fieldcraft must be perfected through our ranks. So when we realized that we had the region Best Warrior competition, that particular line kind of stuck out to me. And I was like, that word perfected made me think about the expert soldier badge. And so that's what we did, and that's what the Best Warrior competition is. All the standards, everything that we're testing is the expert portion of our fieldcraft across all MOSs. So regardless of if it's an infantryman or a cyber guy, the skill level 10 task that we are testing out here is getting after the TAG's directive of the perfected through our ranks part. The good thing about the Best Warrior competition that I feel like is now every MSC has their hand in the planning and execution of it, so they know what it takes to get there. So the information is also flowing out. Even though we only have 2 competitors, the information of how we do things is getting out to all MSCs. So they take it back to their units and understand what's required to get back to that same level that the tag's looking for, which is fieldcraft that is perfected through our ranks.
And I think it's important to point out as well that what he said is the standard is published. It's guidance that all soldiers should be aware of. So there's no question about grading techniques or goes or no goes in any lane or any task that the competitors go through. It's already published doctrine that's already out there, and that goes back to keeping it standardized across the board.
Now I do want to actually pick out one section that y'all brought out here, and I won't say that I remember them at the state competition, but the Foreshop is represented out here, and I've heard a couple people say having them on site has been beyond amazing.
Yeah, so as you can imagine, when you bring in 8, 9 different entities from 8 different commands with 8 different ways of procuring things, with 8 different standards of how the request process goes, you're going to have hiccups. There's no way around those ifs, ands, or buts. But Sergeant Major Gray from the G4 side of the house has assembled an awesome team that has been able to fulfill every request, even when it's last minute, when they have individual issues. It's like I told him the other day at our sync meeting. I took my hat off to him and told him what a great job he's doing, because we would not be where we're at now as smoothly as we are without his responsiveness from his logistical team to get what we need. Because, again, it's not so much that we don't have the equipment, it's the processes that each MSC has in place to get things out here. And he's found a way through his networking capabilities to, I don't know if circumvent's the right way, but he's able to get what we need out here in a very, very timely manner.
Absolutely. Totally agreed. That his presence and his team's presence throughout the competition has made everything run so much more smooth.
Well, gentlemen, I'm gonna give you the opportunity here. If I didn't touch on something maybe you specifically wanted to touch on involving the regional Best Warrior competition, I'll give you a couple minutes to talk about it.
So main thing I want to make sure that we get out of this is the standard of soldier fieldcraft that we're trying to get back to. It's nothing fancy. It's nothing exciting. It's just what we're supposed to do, and we're looking for it at a very particular high level of perfection. And that's what we're doing out here, and we're teaching our units how to get back to that, how to train, assess, and put the resources in place to test our soldiers. So the main thing I want to make sure that we walk away with this is a training standard that we're looking for across the state of South Carolina.
Absolutely. And I'm going to add to that and steal his answer all at the same time, but the it's so much more than the 10 competitors getting evaluated on task. It's the soldiers that are involved, learning, building relationships with other MSCs, building relationships with the command team of the South Carolina National Guard, understanding what goes into these training lanes, and they can bring that product back to their, like you said, a standardized training product back to their units and utilize that when it comes to land navigation or the new .40 qualification that we learned today, or that we went, and the first time ever South Carolina shot the .40 new weapons qualification. Everybody that was present was learning and developing, because that's the way forward. So using this opportunity to develop the South Carolina National Guard, all while putting out a great product for the region and being competitive nationally and taking this region, competitively against all the other regions within the nation.
Well, once again, Sergeant Major, First Sergeant, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to stop by and talk with me. For all of our listeners out there, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification button, comment on what's going on, and we'll catch you in the next episode.